based Maori language initiatives, help schools to engage better with Maori students, improve literacy and support kura kaupapa Maori. Budget 2011 provides an additional $25 million over the next 4 years for whānau ora, with a further $5 million to be reprioritised from within Vote Maori Affairs. I particularly thank the Honourable Dr Peter Sharples and the Honourable Tariana Turia as the ministers responsible, together with the rest of the Maori Party. Mr Speaker, the budget includes a range of new capital spending, mostly focused on improving New Zealand's infrastructure. The government believes that efficient infrastructure will underpin improved productivity in a growing economy. Budget 2011 allocates a further $942 million of capital funding to ultra-fast broadband. As Crown Fibre Holdings completes negotiations for the rollout, this brings the total invested in ultra-fast broadband over the past 3 years to $1.4 billion. A further $28 million has been allocated for ultra-fast broadband in schools. The budget includes the second $250 million tranche of the government's intended $750 million investment over 3 years as its contribution towards Kiwi Rail's $4.6 billion turnaround plan. And there is an additional $88 million over 8 years to complete the upgrade and renewal of the Wellington Metro Rail network. Other key parts of the government's infrastructure program are continuing. We continue to invest over $1 billion a year in state highway improvements, including the 7 roads of national significance and a number of other significant regional projects. And the investments in the new prison at Wiri and a number of new schools remain on target to deliver worthwhile savings to taxpayers via public-private partnerships. Mr Speaker, these capital commitments are part of a larger program of investment in public assets. The net value of government-owned assets is expected to increase by $34.3 billion between 2010 and 2015. This includes a range of high-priority areas, including social infrastructure such as schools, hospitals, housing and student loans, as well as the investment in roads, rail, broadband, electricity transmission and increased investment in financial assets. Some of this extra investment will occur within the state-owned enterprises and Crown entities, but about $21 billion will be invested in core social infrastructure and student loans. The government's objective is to maintain investment in core public assets without increasing debt. This highlights the need for the government to prioritise where its capital is used. Mr Speaker, at present our commercial assets represent the greatest scope to change the government's asset mix. Earlier this year, the government announced it would explore extending the mixed ownership model for some of its commercial assets. This model frees up Crown capital, provides the companies involved with wider access to capital and imposes greater transparency in commercial disciplines and reduces the need for extra government borrowing. It also provides Kiwi investors with the opportunities to put their money in solid New Zealand-controlled companies. It provides the opportunity for KiwiSaver funds and large government investors like the New Zealand Superannuation Fund and ACC to increase the proportion of their funds invested in New Zealand. The government therefore intends to apply the mixed ownership model to Mighty River Power, Genesis Energy, Solid Energy and Meridian Energy, along with reducing its shareholding in Air New Zealand starting in 2012. In all cases, the Crown will retain majority ownership. The expected revenue from offering minority stakes in these 5 companies is between $5 billion and $7 billion. It will therefore fund about 1/3 of the core Crown's increased investment in social assets in the period to 2015. The alternative would have been to borrow more. The government believes it is much better to reprioritise existing capital, in this case from commercial to social assets, rather than always accumulate more debt. The government will seek a mandate in the 2011 general election before proceeding with the mixed ownership model. Mr. Speaker, the lift in private savings will benefit from a sound savings environment. Investors need both confidence to invest and quality, reliable investments to invest in. The collapse of the finance company sector was a major setback to confidence. Since then, the government has materially improved the savings environment. This includes the creation of the Financial Markets Authority, overhaul of securities law, regulation of the insurance sector and of financial advisors, and prudential supervision of non-bank deposit takers. In terms of investment opportunities, both the issue of earthquake bonds and the offer of equity to New Zealand investors under the mixed ownership model will help deepen the local capital markets. In addition, the Debt Management Office will issue a new long-dated inflation-indexed bond. This reflects clearly expressed demand from long-term investors. The local government funding agency will start operating later this year. It will be a collective vehicle providing cheaper funding for local body projects as well as more liquid, better diversified assets for investors. Mr. Speaker, this year the ACT Party will bring two challenging bills to the House which the government will support to Select Committee. The Regulatory Standards Bill seeks to improve the quality of regulatory processes. It includes a mechanism for providing transparency around the making of regulations and an incentive mechanism to ensure compliance with the process. The other ACT Party bill is the Spending Cap People's Veto Bill. This bill seeks to cap real per capita government spending. In both cases, the government will give the bill and the submissions on it careful consideration. Mr. Speaker, the final elements of last year's tax package have now come into force, including tighter income definitions related to state assistance and reducing the company tax rate to 28%. This low rate of tax on businesses demonstrates that we are prepared to back them and recognise that business is the growth engine in the modern economy. Mr. Speaker, last year's review of the thin capitalisation rules did not include banks, which are subject to a separate regime because of their high gearing. Having reviewed the banking sector, we have decided to lift the minimum level of non-deductible capital from 4% to 6%, which is more in line with international norms. This will provide estimated revenue of $100 million over the next 4 years. I thank my colleague, the Honourable Peter Dunn, for his ongoing work in improving our tax system. Mr. Speaker, the measures announced in this budget will put both the government finances and the economy on a much sounder footing despite a series of adverse events and a slower economic recovery. The projected operating deficit will fall dramatically over the next 3 years, and there will be a significant surplus from 2014-15. This is a year sooner than the position forecast last year, and contributions to the New Zealand Super Fund are projected to resume from 2016-17, also 2 years sooner than last projected. Mr. Speaker, the debt projections have also improved. Even with absorbing the cost of the earthquakes, net core Crown debt is now projected to peak at 29.6% of GDP in 2014-15 and then decline steadily. This contrasts strongly with the outlook of ever-rising debt which the government inherited in late 2008. Debt would have peaked at around 27.5% of GDP in the absence of the earthquakes. Looking further ahead, continuation of current policy would see net debt eliminated entirely by 2024. This emphasises the responsible, longer-term approach taken by this government, which will leave future governments with choices about whether to invest, to spend or reduce taxes. It will also provide room to ride out future recessions, which surely will occur. Our long-term fiscal objective remains to ensure that net debt remains no more than 20% of GDP by the early 2020s. The current projection shows this being comfortably achieved. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2011 is about building our future. The Prime Minister has made clear this government's aspirations for an economy that values enterprise, rewards people for effort and encourages them to get ahead. This is not a typical election year budget. It is a responsible budget appropriate to New Zealand's situation. Budget 2011 shows how, from the depths of the global financial crisis, when a decade of red ink was in prospect, and despite the devastating Canterbury earthquakes and other setbacks, the government has laid the basis for future prosperity. It is within sight of budget surpluses and falling public debt. It has funded reconstruction of Christchurch, our second largest city. It has in prospect the strongest economic growth for a decade. It has materially improved the tax system. It has placed KiwiSaver onto a sounder, more sustainable footing and instilled a culture built on savings rather than debt. And it will provide future New Zealanders with real choices about further lowering taxes, adding quality public services, or both. We set a path for responsible government spending from the start of our term, and we maintain that path in this budget. Mr. Speaker, this budget continues to build a platform for a stronger, more ambitious New Zealand. I commend this budget to the House.
Order. The question is that the Appropriation 2011-12 Estimates Bill be now read a second time. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I move